So we hear from a lot of people who improve a wide variety of digestive symptoms by supplementing with Betaine HCL to help acidify their stomach and correct a low stomach acid issue that happens to be creating a lot of symptoms. But I got a great question from someone asking about how long should I expect this to take to see improvements when supplementing with Betaine HCL. I realized, oh wow, I never really talked about that in the video. So let's cover that in this video and help you understand how those variables can change from person to person and why we might see different timing. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So it was over on our video for does hydrochloric acid production decline with age that user at daughter or something or other says, how long does it take to feel the effects from using HCL? So if someone's going to supplement with HCL, how long should they need to do that before they start to improve these symptoms that are very common to see show up when someone has a low stomach acid issue? And a lot of actual digestive symptoms show up from someone not making enough stomach acid. A lot of these symptoms are not caused from too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. In a lot of these cases, it's coming from not making enough stomach acid to help things work correctly. And then the small amount of acid that's in there can create some symptoms like reflux or bloating or indigestion and such. So when we're looking at this, we need to look at some variables. And the first thing that we need to think about is that we're trying to correct a malfunction when we're helping to acidify the stomach. The malfunction is that the stomach is not acidifying the way that it should so that we can break down the food that we're eating and get the nutrients out of that food. That's kind of why we eat food, is so that we can access those nutrients. In order to do that, we need to acidify the food so that it can be broken down properly. So we need to understand that this is not an imbalance. In all of our books and courses, we talk about a variety of different imbalances that can happen in the body that have the ability to create a wide variety of symptoms or health issues, and imbalances of things like circadian rhythm and electrolyte imbalances, and all these things have the ability to create a lot of symptoms like insomnia or cravings or mental and emotional issues and all these things that we see in our lives. But when we're looking to correct an imbalance, that has the ability to take some time to correct that for some people. They might need to work on that imbalance for 1-3 months or even longer. If you want to learn more about those imbalances and figure out how to see, are you dealing with some type of imbalance that's creating symptoms for you, we'll put a link in the description below for our totally free digestion course, and that'll kind of walk you through figuring out if there's problems going on that you might not know about. But when we're looking at acidifying the stomach, we're not trying to correct an imbalance, we're just trying to correct a malfunction. We're basically trying to synthesize the digestive process by taking this Betaine HCL, which is very similar to what the body produces when it's trying to acidify the stomach. And we're going to put that in the stomach when we eat to help acidify that food so that we can break down that food and access the nutrients in that food. So since that's what we're doing, it has the ability to create improvement for some folks on the first dose. So let's just say that a person just had a lack of stomach acid. They didn't have the ability to create that stomach acid. So then they're going to eat some food and then they're going to take this Betaine HCL. Well, on the very first dose, they may have the ability to acidify that stomach enough to remove whatever symptom they were having, whether that was like indigestion or maybe they were having some, this just feels like it sits in my stomach like a rock for 6 hours after I eat this steak. So when they can acidify that food, all of a sudden that symptom could be gone. But I just described a perfect scenario where someone just takes a supplement and that fixed all my problems, way to go. So we almost never see that, and you're going to understand why as we go through this. So the first variable we want to look at is the person using the correct dosage of HCL? A lot of times when we buy supplements from the store, the dosage that the manufacturer suggests will be much lower than what is actually going to be effective, just because they're protecting themselves and they have different liability issues that they need to watch out for. And I'm not telling you to always take more than what the bottle says, but that's just the reality of what we need to look at. So somebody might be just reading a bottle and saying, oh, it says to take 1 per day, I'm just going to take 1 per day. And that's usually not going to be very effective. In the description below this video, I'll put a link to this study on mealtime supplementation with Betaine HCL for functional hypochlorhydria. And in this study, they basically took some folks and they created hypochlorhydria. And hypochlorhydria just means that there's low stomach acid. And they created this by using a PPI medication that's used to treat acid reflux symptoms. So they turned off these people's ability to create this stomach acid, and then they supplemented with Betaine HCL to see, does it help improve these symptoms that often come about with low stomach acid, like bloating and indigestion and all these things that we talk about in all of our other videos. And they found that it worked very well. And you can go through that study if you want to look through that a little bit more. But they talked about the dosages that they used, and they tested out different dosages ranging from 1,500 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams to 4,500 milligrams. And 4,500 is a lot in my mind. I hear from people that use higher dosages like that, but with our clients, we never recommend doing more than like 2,500 milligrams. And I'm not telling you to use 2,500 milligrams. I'm just saying that this is what we hear about, because it seems that the human body seems to make about 2,500 milligrams worth of HCl with a full meal when everything is working correctly. So in that free digestion course, we teach people how to figure out what's going to be the right dose for them. But the reality is that if somebody's using a dose that is too small, it's going to take them a lot longer to see any type of improvement, even if the only thing that's going wrong is that they're not making enough stomach acid. So another thing we want to think about is that if somebody is using a Betaine HCL supplement that contains pepsin, they might not be able to work up to that higher dose. I'm not going to get into this a whole lot, but I'll put a link in the description below for understanding pepsin and why we don't use it. Pepsin can really help us break down protein, but the body makes more of its own pepsin anyways. So it just needs to be acidified to be activated. So we like to use a Betaine HCL that does not contain pepsin, so that if someone needs to work up to a little bit of a higher dose, they can do that without creating discomfort, and then they see results a whole lot faster. And it can sometimes be hard to find a Betaine HCL that doesn't contain pepsin. Most manufacturers put it in there. I'll put a link in the description below to the one that we use. I'm not telling you you need to use that or that one's going to fix everything that's been going wrong in your body for the last 30 years, but I know you're going to ask, so I'll just let you see that down in the description below. Now, the other thing we need to think about is the body's ability to generate any hydrochloric acid. A lot of people that are having low stomach acid issues may be producing some HCl. That's why we don't tell people, oh, just go up to 5 HCl capsules right away. Some people might already be making 2, 3, 4 capsules worth of HCl on their own, and they might just need a little bit of a boost. So we need to understand that some people might not be able to make any HCl, and some people may be making some. So if the body's already making some, you're probably going to see results faster than someone whose body is not making HCl at all. But this is the biggest factor that we need to think about, and that is some type of bacterial overgrowth or some microorganism that could be in this stomach or maybe the small intestine. And a lot of times when there's an overgrowth in the stomach, they put out waste byproducts that can be alkaline. So they can be alkalizing the stomach further. So if you have a major overgrowth here in the stomach, it could be making it very alkaline, so that when you put in 5 HCl capsules, that may only be as effective as 1 or even none, because that acid is getting neutralized by the alkaline byproduct that this bacteria is putting out. So a lot of people understanding what the timing is going to be is, when is that going to get better? When am I going to see improvement of my symptoms? Well, that really is going to be variable dependent on the type of load of overgrowth that could be there. And this alkaline byproduct from an overgrowth also has the ability to magnify some symptoms when people first start using HCl. So if that happens with you, we'll put a link in the description below for our video on possible troubles that can show up when first starting HCl. Another thing to think about is a lot of people have an overgrowth in the small intestine, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, like all the cool kids call it. And that can create a lot of discomfort, a lot of bloating, a lot of constipation. A lot of different symptoms can show up when there's an overgrowth here. But acidifying the stomach is not usually going to be enough to correct that. And if somebody has an overgrowth in the stomach, just acidifying the stomach is not going to be able to correct that in a lot of cases either. But the reason that we see that this is so common is because this stomach acid is not just there to help us digest our food, It's the barrier to the whole digestive tract. So when these varmints come in on the food that we're eating, they should die in an acid bath there in the stomach. But if someone is not creating enough stomach acid, now this overgrowth can kind of take over, and they set up camp and they have a keg party, and then they can move down here and set up camp here. So it's really common when someone doesn't have enough stomach acid to see some type of overgrowth that is then going to delay how quickly those improved symptoms have the ability to show up. So different people could be taking the same dose of HCl, and one person can see improvements relatively quickly, while the other person could be doing this for 2 or 3 months and not seeing any improvement whatsoever. Well, there's an overgrowth that's neutralizing the efforts that you're putting in. So then a person really needs to take steps to reduce that overgrowth. And when you can reduce the overgrowth and all the alkaline byproducts that are coming from that, now the HCl has the ability to acidify the stomach the way that it's supposed to. I'm not going to get into how to do that here, but we'll put a link in the description below for our video on how to wipe out bad bacteria in the stomach, and you can check that out if you feel like that's an issue for you. Just remember, this overgrowth issue is usually going to be the biggest factor, and we don't like to see people go over 5-HCl when that's not enough to acidify the stomach. We'd rather see them reduce the overgrowth and reduce the alkalinity from that, and then those 5-HCl are going to be a lot more effective. Another thing to think about is the type of food that a person is eating. If a person is having protein, they usually need a little bit more HCl to really break down those proteins. And then the type of protein could dictate the amount of HCl needed as well. Like eggs are going to be a lot easier to break down than like red meat or steak or lamb or something like that. So just understand that this is just another variable to think about beyond this overgrowth issue, is the type of food a person is eating, or the level of protein that they're consuming could also dictate that they may need to acidify that stomach a little bit more. So they might have more work to do in reducing an overgrowth or helping the body acidify that stomach more before those symptoms start to really improve. And we also want to understand that some of the symptoms that are really common to show up with low stomach acid are bloating and indigestion and acid reflux. Yes, acid reflux is caused by a lack of stomach acid. It's not usually caused by too much stomach acid like advertisers want us to believe. There's a valve here at the bottom of the esophagus that has to be triggered to close so things don't come back up, and it's triggered by stomach acid. So that's a big factor. Constipation can be caused by a lack of stomach acid, and there are other causes of constipation. We have a lot of videos on that. But when it's some other symptom, we have to understand that there could be other digestive malfunctions going on as well. Low stomach acid is not the only digestive malfunction that can happen. If you have other things going on, you can check out our video on full digestive reset, and that goes into some real depth. That's a long video that kind of helps you really understand all the things that can go wrong. But the other question is, how long will I need to use the Betaine HCL? And again, this is really going to vary. The goal is that we're trying to synthesize digestion so that the body can then acidify the food, break it down, start getting all the minerals and nutrients that the body needs to be able to make its own hydrochloric acid, and then that allows us to reduce the amount of Betaine HCl that we're supplementing with. But there's a lot of other variables that can kind of restrict the body's ability to make this hydrochloric acid beyond just having access to nutrients that are needed. So if you want to understand that a little bit more, you can jump over now and check out our video on how do I know when it's time to stop using HCl. I can't wait to hear about your results.